Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor. Board of Commissioners public meeting Tuesday, August 2nd, 2016. The time is now 7:48. Pursuant to the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, notice of this meeting was published in the December 24th, 2015 issues of the Nutley Sun, the Star Ledger, and the Herald News. A copy of this notice has been posted on the Nutley Town Hall Bulletin Board, and a copy is on file in the Municipal Clerk's office. Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Tucci.
Here.
Commissioner Evans. Commissioner Petracco.
Here.
Mayor Scarpelli.
Here.
All present, Mayor.
Minutes?
We have minutes tonight for July 12th, 2016. I need a motion, please.
Move it.
Second.
Commissioner Rogers.
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci.
Abstain.
Commissioner Evans.
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco.
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli.
Aye.
And that's it for minutes, Mayor.
Communications and correspondence?
No correspondence or communications this evening.
Bills?
Bills. Bill list for Tuesday, August 2nd, 2016. Public Affairs, $117,277.04. Revenue and Finance, $7,260,311.68. Public Safety, $77,001.64. Public Works, $591,276.20. Parks and Public Property, $740,723.10. Total payroll, $929,351.86, for a grand total of $9,715,941.52.
Move the bills.
Second.
Commissioner Rogers.
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci.
Aye.
Commissioner Evans.
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco.
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli.
Aye.
And that's it for bills.
Public comment on agenda items only. Madam Clerk, read the notice.
Yes, Mayor. All persons addressing the Board of Commissioners regarding community concerns should approach the microphone and provide their name and address for the record. Unless further time is granted by the Board, each person shall limit their address to 3 minutes. All remarks to the Board and its individual members must be addressed to the Mayor. The Mayor may defer citizens' comments to the appropriate member of the Board. Dialogue between citizens and others addressing the Board shall be allowed unless the Mayor or presiding officer or the majority of the membership of the Board shall determine that the interests of decorum and or the expeditious conduct of municipal business are being adversely affected by such dialogue.
Anybody like to come before the Board and ask any questions on agenda items only?
Penny Landry, 135 Lakeside Drive. Resolution 199-16, resolution authorizing the execution of a redevelopment agreement between Nutley and Kingsland Street Urban Renewal, LLC. Is Kingsland Street Urban Renewal an affiliate of the Russo Development Company, the mega builder of apartments?
No.
It is not an affiliate of Russo Development Company. Who are the officers of Kingsland Street Urban Renewal, LLC?
Mr. Genetempo or Mr. Inglesino?
Kingsland is the urban renewal joint venture entity between Hackensack Medical University and Hall University.
And who are the officers of the LLC?
I don't have the exact officers, but that is the entity, joint venture entity of those two institutions.
So we're introducing a resolution agreement between an LLC and we do not know who the officers are. Is that correct?
No, it is the joint venture entity.
So an LLC has officers. This says it's an LLC.
No, an LLC has members. An LLC
Okay, well,
does
who
not
are the
have
members of the LLC?
Again, the members are Hackensack Medical and Seton Hall University. It's a joint venture between those two entities.
Okay, all right. So Kingsland Street Urban Renewal members are from Hackensack Medical and Seton Hall. It further says that Hoffman LaRoche is the fee owner of the property, including the Phase 1 premises. Fee ownership of the property and our Phase 1 premises included but not limited to PB Nutcliff Med LLC, the owner. Who is PB Nutcliff Med LLC?
PB Nutcliff is entity as contracted with Hoffman LaRoche to purchase the Roche property.
And when you say the Roche property, the entire, how many acres?
That's approximately 119 acres in Nutley and Clifton, approximately 52 acres of which are in Nutley. There was a press release that went out a week or so ago announcing the contract to sell the property from Hoffman LaRoche to a company called Prism. PB Nutcliff is an affiliate of Prism.
PB Nutcliff, affiliate of Prism. Okay. And it says that the PB Nutcliff, the owner, and whereas the redeveloper submitted to the Township of Nutley conceptual, architectural, construction, and site plans and drawings, collectively the concept plans, which depict and describe the scope and nature of the redeveloper, which would be Kingsland Street Urban Renewal, correct? Is that this document?
Well, I think the document that you're referring to is the redevelopment plan, and I think I will be making some pretty comprehensive remarks addressing, hopefully in a comprehensive way, the status of the Roche site, and my understanding is there may be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the conclusion of my remarks. I think a lot of the questions that you might have hopefully will be addressed in my remarks.
Okay, you want me to hold my questions till afterwards? Because this is the point where you can ask about agenda items. I would like to ask about Resolution 198-16. I requested and received a copy today, and I was very grateful for that. It says that this is concerning Block 201, Lots 1 through 4, for certain improvements, and it references 3 exhibits. Exhibit A, which is the form of project structure agreement. Is that available for the citizens to look at? Because it was not included and it is not in the handout today. Also, it includes Exhibit B, a form of pledge agreement. And the one I'm particularly interested in is Exhibit C, form of redeveloper contribution agreement. Could you explain what a redeveloper contribution agreement entails?
Sure. In my remarks, my planned remarks, I'm going to be all of those documents, but they are not available for public review.
Not available for public view?
At this particular point in time, I'm going to explain the material terms that are going to be contained in those documents to the public, but they will be deliberative until they are signed and delivered to the various parties as part of the project and transactions that I'm going to outline to you in a moment.
Okay, so I can have my additional questions at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to be heard on agenda items only? Seeing none. Any announcements by the Board of Commissioners?
Just one announcement, Mayor. Tomorrow night, beginning at 7 o'clock, we're having a Pokemon Go party at the Mud Hole. We will have pizza, we will have lemon ice, we will have refreshments, and hopefully everyone can capture their Pokemon or whatever those things are in the Mud Hole. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Mayor, not to end on a lower note, but the third quarter tax bill, the grace period has been extended to August 16th. There's been many questions that have come into the office. It's on the website. It's on the bills. But I want to just reiterate that the grace period is through August 16th.
Can you get to the cashier's office by a Pokemon app?
It's possible. It's possible.
Get the right character, gives you a discount.
Thanks, Commissioners.
That's not possible.
I'm going to turn this over to Mr. John Inglesino, who is our redevelopment attorney. As you can see from some of the questions and some of the answers, very technical aspects of some of the documents that we are reviewing tonight and voting on. So we thought it was in the best interest of the public to have Mr. Inglesino kind of give a history and a review of what he can and summarize some of the documents that we're going to be voting on tonight and over the next couple of months. John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to all. Let me just say at the outset that I've had the opportunity to work with many municipalities and public officials over the years, both as an attorney and as a public official, and I've never met a group of people who are more dedicated to their community than you're here in Nutley, and you're very fortunate in that regard. And that comment really extends to your employees that I've interacted with, your clerk, and most notably your township attorney, Alan Genetempo, not only a gentleman and a terrific lawyer, but also somebody whose heart and soul is really dedicated to Nutley. So that has really made my experience a very, very positive one. As the mayor indicated, I'd really like to give you a status of where we are with regard to the Roche property. I want to talk about a little bit of the history because I think that's important to put this into some context. I want to talk about the redevelopment process. I want to talk about the deal structure, the redevelopment plan, the various agreements that are going to comprise our overall transaction, and also address some public actions that have been taken and that are up for consideration this evening. With regard to some historical context, you all know that Roche had been operating at its location on Kingsland Avenue for many, many decades. The entire site in Nutley and Clifton is approximately 119 acres, with approximately 52 acres here in Nutley. At its peak, the Roche site was 10% of the entire tax levy for the township of Nutley, generating approximately $9.8 million in tax revenue. 2013, Roche ceased operations at the site. They have torn down many of the buildings on the site, as many of you know who have driven past it. Roche and the township began discussing the future of the Roche site a few years ago. You may recall that Nutley engaged a planning company, Perkins Eastman, at Roche's expense to prepare a study for prospective uses for the Roche site in connection with the repurposing discussions. Perkins Eastman plans were completed in January of 2014. Many of you may recall the township's commissioners held a special public briefing of the Perkins Eastman report to keep the public fully informed and to solicit public input. And suffice it to say that without a specific catalyst for the repurposing of this site, the future of the Roche site was very, very uncertain. The first choice was to find a Roche replacement, another mega-billion multinational single campus owner who would like to occupy the site. And we put that challenge to Roche's broker, Jones Lang LaSalle, who has a worldwide presence and one of the best brokers in the business, particularly in the area of pharmaceuticals. The bottom line, there was no Roche replacement. There is none, and there won't be one for the foreseeable future. And the Nutley Board of Commissioners did not want to see this property languish and become a long-term blight on the community. So what did they do? Started to not only engage with Roche and the community, but also to embark on a redevelopment process. The commissioners unanimously decided to take an active, hands-on approach to securing the best possible future for this site. So your commissioners, while working in partnership with Roche, also let Roche know very clearly that they would not give Roche or some developer carte blanche to develop the site in any way they saw fit. Your commissioners, while concerned about the short term, I can assure you were and continue to be intensely focused on the long-term development of the site. They made it clear that the future development of this site must be something that not only provides strong ratables, but also contributes positively to the character of the community. So Nutley used the redevelopment process to get better control of the property. In March of 2015, Nutley declared the property to be in need of redevelopment on a condemnation basis. Roche filed a lawsuit challenging Nutley's blight declaration back in April of 2015, and the reason why Nutley proceeded on a condemnation basis was because in a worst-case scenario, your commissioner, that was the vehicle that the commissioners would have, again, in a worst-case scenario, to get control of the property and put it back to use in a way that benefited the community. The lawsuit with Roche is currently pending, but will be dismissed with prejudice, meaning it can't be filed again, as part of the overall transaction that I'm going to describe. Around that time, and this is a couple of years ago, Nutley became aware of a potential joint venture for a new medical school between Hackensack University Medical Center and Seton Hall University. So for the past year and a half or so, we have been working on a project that you've probably read about that would result in a new medical school right here in Nutley and Clifton, which would not only provide immediate significant community benefits, but would also be a catalyst for desired economic development for the entirety of the site into the future. Now I want to talk a little bit about the deal structure. Prism, developer, will purchase the site, and the site consisting of approximately 119 acres, the entirety of the site, from Roche. The contract of sale was just signed and publicly announced. Although Roche is selling the property to Prism, Roche will stay on the site to perform certain environmental remediation work over the next several years. Medical school site, consisting of approximately 14 acres, 10.98 of which are in Nutley, was previously subdivided to carve out the physical area of the law school. Buildings 123 and 123A, comprising approximately 477,000 square feet, and those are the buildings that sit right on the municipal boundary. Some of the buildings are in Nutley and some of them are in Clifton, are the buildings that will comprise the medical school site. Hackensack University Medical Center and Seton Hall University have formed a joint entity known as Kingsland Street Urban Renewal, LLC. As recently publicly announced, they have signed, that is Kingsland, has signed a long-term lease with Prism to lease the medical school lot, again, including buildings 123 and 123A. I don't think we can discount the possibility that the medical school site, and the medical school, of course, being a nonprofit, could potentially acquire that site in simple title at some point in the future. So I know what you're all thinking at this point, since schools are nonprofit entities, and you just told me that this medical school is nonprofit, why in the world would Nutley agree to take this valuable 10.98 acres of land off the tax rolls? And the answer is that your commissioners would not and did not agree to do that. And a significant effort has been made to cut the best financial deal possible with the medical school and to ensure that that deal remains in effect for decades to come. And I'm going to talk more about what that financial agreement is in a moment. Redevelopment is a process. It starts by declaring an area in need of redevelopment. Again, that occurred back in March of 2015. Second step in the process is the adoption of a redevelopment plan. The redevelopment plan for Phase 1, and only Phase 1, was adopted by ordinance this past July 19th. The planning process for the rest of the site, will, begin as shortly as possible as the market hopefully responds in a positive way to the medical school. Now I want to talk a little bit about the redevelopment agreement. As was mentioned, tonight the commissioners will consider adopting a resolution authorizing the execution of the development agreement. That agreement is a contract between Nutley and Kingsland of the medical school. Redevelopment agreement will, among other things, require the medical school to commence construction of the project by November of this year and end by August of 2018. However, there is a one-year extension exercisable by the medical school at their option on either the front end, the back end, or a combination of both. The redevelopment agreement applies to all of Phase 1, not just buildings 123, 123A, but the entirety of that 10.9 acres, 10.98 acres in Phase 1, which is being leased by the medical school. The redevelopment agreement contains provisions that require the redeveloper to come to the commissioners for filing site plan applications for consistency with the redevelopment plan and to assess community impact. Those of you who are familiar with the planning board process, if you own property and you want to file an application to build something, you just file your application with the planning board, you send out your public notice, you come before the planning board. We've incorporated an extra step here, in part because your commissioners are very hands-on and really want to assess what's happening on the site. So when the redeveloper here wants to build another building in Phase 1, which they have the right to do in accordance with the redevelopment plan, they first have to come to the commissioners before they can file with the planning board. We felt that that was an important measure of protection for the community. The redevelopment agreement requires the medical school, and this is also in the financial agreement, by the way, but some concepts are just better explained than the concepts of the redevelopment agreement and some in the financial agreement. There are technical reasons why some provisions are in some agreements and some are in the other. But the redevelopment agreement requires the medical school to maintain its own security. Commissioners have been very concerned, while supportive concept of the medical school, they were also concerned about the impacts that any facility may have on community services. And by requiring the medical school to maintain its own security force, that will certainly reduce the burden on the township's police force. Similarly, the redevelopment agreement requires the medical school to tend to its own refuse and recycling as to not overly burden your DPW services here in town. The redevelopment agreement also addresses issues with regards of transfers of interest. Another provision in the redevelopment agreement, which is very important, the redevelopment agreement provides for a term called redevelopment area bonds. These bonds, which will be issued in connection with this overall project, will be purchased by an affiliate of the redeveloper. And I will discuss redevelopment area bonds, known as RABs, in more detail in a moment. Now, the redevelopment agreement will only take effect when all of the other agreements that we're going to reference here in a moment are signed by all of the parties, so that all of us, Hackensack Medical Center, Seton Hall, Prism, Roche, and Nutley, so that we all jump in the pool, so to speak, together. We're not going to have a situation where Nutley is giving rights to parties and then hoping that parties sign documents that provide benefits back to Nutley. It's all going to be done at the same time. Those are really the salient terms of the redevelopment agreement. Now I want to discuss the financial agreement, very important document. Tonight the commissioners will consider introducing an ordinance, and Some of these agreements by law have to be adopted by ordinance. Some are resolutions. So if you're wondering why are some ordinances and some resolutions, just because that's the way the law provides. So tonight the commissioners will consider introducing an ordinance for a financial agreement between Nutley and Kingsland or the medical school. Financial agreement obligates the medical school to make payments in lieu of taxes, otherwise known as pilots, to the township. This is the agreement, along with the others that I will outline in a moment, that ensure that Nutley will receive money from the medical school property which could otherwise become tax exempt. Again, we want to make sure that the medical school is going to, Nutley is going to get a financial benefit, an immediate financial benefit from the medical school. Now, the financial agreement only applies to buildings 123 and 123A, that lot, which is after the subdivision, lot 1.03 in block 201 consists of 2.29 acres. The rest of the property, both in Phase 1 and the property outside of Phase 1, will still be taxed in the same way as every other property in town. A couple of points about pilots. One, pilot payments are by statute based on one of two statutory formulas, either a percentage of gross revenue or a percentage of construction cost. Neither formula really works in this instance. We needed to figure out a way to have a negotiated pilot payment. In order to enact and to have a negotiated pilot payment, as we have done here, there must be redevelopment area bonds, or RABs. You have a RAB, then under the law, you can negotiate your pilot payment. A RAB is a bond. It's a bond issued by the town to help fund public improvements and energy-efficient parts of the project. The RAB for this project is $1 million. A few points that I want to make about redevelopment area bonds, and particularly the redevelopment area bonds in connection with this project. Point number one is that this RAB will be non-recourse to the township. That means if the project goes bust, Nutley taxpayers are not on the hook. These bonds are secured only by the pledged portion of the pilot and not by the taxpayers of Nutley. I want to repeat that. The bonds are not secured by the full faith and credit of the township of Nutley. They are only secured by the pledged portion of the pilot. A pledged portion of the pilot is the principal and interest on the bonds. And that amount is in excess of what the pilot payments are. So the pilot payments, technically, you would have a pledged portion, principal and interest, and an unpledged portion, which is the payment that you make to the town. Point two, an affiliate of the redeveloper of the medical school is purchasing the RAB bond. So we have a buyer for the bond. It's not going to be the general public, so I'm sorry you can't invest in this project in that regard. That bond will be purchased by an affiliate of the medical school. They will own their own bond, which again means if for some reason the deal goes bust, there is no risk to the taxpayers of Nutley. The risk is entirely on the redeveloper. Point three, the RAB does not increase Nutley's net debt. So it has no effect whatsoever on Nutley's borrowing capacity or on the interest rates charged to Nutley for future borrowing. Point four, the RABs are non-callable, meaning that the redeveloper cannot defease the bonds, which can't pay them off, to rid themselves of their pilot obligation. Under the law, if you're making pilot payments, that party generally has the right to opt out of the pilot. Well, if you have a nonprofit that owns the property and they opt out of the pilot, they don't have to pay taxes, so they don't pay anything. So it was very important as a part of this overall structure that the bonds be non-callable so that they cannot be paid off. And that preserves, along with the other things that I'm describing, the obligation on the part of Kingsland Medical School to continue to make these pilot payments to the town. Few benefits from redevelopment area bonds. One, they enable Nutley and the redeveloper, as I indicated, to negotiate the terms of the pilot payment. So you're not stuck, or so that we wouldn't be stuck, into one of two statutory formulas that really that didn't work for us. So two, along with the other documents, the redevelopment area bond is a critical component of the overall project because, again, it ensures that Nutley will receive revenue from the medical school for many, many years to come. Now we get to what Jerry Maguire would be the part where we show you the money. And I want to discuss the pilot terms. And these terms apply to that portion of Phase 1 consisting of buildings 123 and 123A, Lot 1.03 and Block 201, 2.29 acres located within Phase 1. The redeveloper, first of all, will pay ordinary taxes on the balance of Phase 1, which is currently land. Now, the pilot commences upon substantial completion of the improvements that are going to be made, which is really retrofitting inside buildings 123 and 123A. Until then, they pay regular ordinary taxes. Pilot lasts for 30 years. Redeveloper pays full tax on the balance of the Phase 1 site. Remember, the Phase 1 site, 10.98 acres. The pilot affects 2.29 acres. So full taxes are being paid on the balance of the site. Now, with respect to buildings 123 and 123A, once the pilot goes into effect, Nutley will receive the sum of $379,663. What is that? That is the equivalent of 2016 taxes, if you count taxes as school, library, open space, and municipal taxes in Nutley. That's what the tax bill would be for 2016. They pay that amount, and that amount will increase 5% every 5 years. Now, 58% of buildings 123 and 123A, about 277,000 square feet, will be used solely for academic purposes, and those areas will be delineated on exhibits to the agreement. That will leave a little more than 200,000 square feet left for prospective commercial or other use. The agreement that we reached was because, remember, there's going to be investment made into 123 and 123A, and the deal would not support added assessment on the academic portion of the building, which is why we locked in their obligation based upon current taxes for 2016. But after they make improvements in the building, some of those improvements are going to increase assessment of the building. And we have a schedule of that, and we reached agreement on what that added assessment would be. So if they lease out the additional 200,000 plus square feet, I think it's actually 211,000 square feet, then Nutley will receive an additional $135,427 to Nutley, which would be the 2016 taxes plus the added assessment, and that amount will increase 2% each year. And if they lease out less than the full 200,000 plus square feet, then the amount that Nutley will receive proportionately reduced from the amount that they would get if they out the entirety of the space. With regard to future development, this is actually included in the redevelopment agreement, not the financial agreement, but I thought it made more sense to talk about future development, what that would mean tax-wise as part of this discussion. If a parking garage is built in Nutley, and the redevelopment plan contemplates that a structured parking garage may be built in Nutley, there's some discussion about that, and quite frankly, the plan at the moment, as represented to us by the medical school, is not to build a structured parking garage in Nutley, but that is still subject to further review on their part. They've got planning issues, engineering issues, geotech issues, et cetera, that they still have to work out. So there is a chance, albeit smaller chance than not, that a parking garage will be built in Nutley. If a parking garage is built in Nutley, there will be a separate pilot agreement, separate financial agreement, and Nutley will get the equivalent of full municipal taxes. That would be municipal, open space, and library, but not school. If there is additional development in Phase 1, again, Phase 1 being that 10.98 acres of land, if there is additional development in Phase 1, there will be a separate financial agreement for that, and Nutley will receive an amount equal to full municipal taxes, which is municipal, open space, and library, and school taxes. So Nutley will essentially be made whole, if you will, as if they were taxed on a full ad valorem basis. In addition to the amounts that I've just listed above, the medical school will also pay 5% of the pilot amount to the county. Nutley here, it's the county of Essex. So those are the financial terms of the financial pilot. There are other documents that were referenced earlier that I would also like to discuss. There is an owner's consent document. This is a document that's between PRISM, or PB Nutcliffe, and Nutley. It's an important document because although the medical school is obligated to pilot payments, what if they don't? What is our security? And our security is the equivalent now, under this owner's consent, we're getting the equivalent of a tax lien on the fee interest of the property. So Nutley would have the same rights to file a tax lien and foreclose on this property for non-payment of pilot payments that it would have on any other property owner in Nutley who owns property and doesn't pay its taxes. A very important protection for the town to make sure, and again, ensure that those pilot payments are made. We also have a special assessment agreement, which has to be approved by ordinance similar to a financial agreement because that's what the law provides. We are viewing the special assessment agreement as additional security for the pilot. And this gets a little technical. I apologize for that, but it is what it is. But it's actually a primary obligation of the redeveloper, and that is that under the special assessment agreement, for improvements that are made to the property, both with regard to public improvement and certain energy improvements, that they would agree to pay a special assessment to the town in connection with those improvements which are associated with the development area bond. And because of the redevelopment area bond providing the funding for those improvements, that gives rise to our ability to impose a special assessment obligation, and that obligation is a primary obligation. The payment will be in the same amount as the pilot. That obligation will be a primary obligation. However, if the pilot payments are made, then the developer will get a credit for the sums due under the special assessment agreement. So they will be paying once, they won't be paying twice. The next agreement that I have before the Commissioner, which again is really designed to provide additional layers of protection to the town, is a developer contribution agreement. That agreement is simply a contract between the medical school and the town, which essentially says that, but for the developer contribution agreement, the town would have never done all that it's done to facilitate this project. And so it's really just a straight up contract by which the developer agrees to make contributions to the town. Again, they are in the same amounts as the pilot payments, and they are there to further ensure that the town gets the benefit of its financial agreement with the redeveloper medical school. The last agreement to be considered tonight is a project structure agreement. That agreement is, and you're going to laugh because when I say this, but that is a grant agreement that kind of summarizes the terms that I've just outlined to you in sort of an omnibus kind of way, so that someone 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, or 6 months from now, wants to understand how all of these various agreements interrelate, they can do so in one document. Basically summarizes what I've just outlined for you tonight. It makes clear what the intent of the parties is with regard to this agreement. Again, so there's a sort of one document, one agreement that outlines all of that. So there's some actions that have been previously taken by the commissioners. Again, they've declared the entirety of the Roche site in Nutley to be development. The medical school space or lots have been subdivided previously by application made and approved by the planning board. The commissioners have adopted the redevelopment plan for phase 1, which was just done on July 19th, and they have passed a resolution authorizing submission of the application for the redevelopment area bond to the local finance board in Trenton, because the local finance board in Trenton, which is a state body, has to approve of the overall transaction well in its approval of giving Nutley the green light to issue the redevelopment area bond. There are certain actions that we have requested and the commissioners will consider this evening. One is a resolution to adopt the redevelopment agreement and to designate Kinsland as the redeveloper of Phase 1. 2, there'll be an ordinance introducing the financial agreement. 3, an ordinance introducing the special assessment agreement. 4, a resolution for the redeveloper contribution agreement, and a resolution for the project structure agreement. Lastly is a resolution for the pledge agreement. This is a bond document that is required by the state in connection with the redevelopment area bond. There will be additional public actions required as we continue in this process, and of course the public will be notified and have an opportunity to come out to a meeting like this and hear explanations and ask questions. If I may just address a question that was asked in a little more detail at the beginning of my remarks, the documents that I've just outlined been heavily negotiated and are not going to be, while they've been described and the terms have been described, the documents themselves will not be available for public view at this time. Until they are executed, they're still deliberative and some of the documents allude to information that at the moment we're obligated confidential as they relate to actions between Hoffman LaRoche, Prism, and the lease with the medical school. It is contemplated that these documents held, signed, held in escrow, and released simultaneously with all of the documents that will be signed and exchanged in connection with this transaction. And of course, at that time, those documents will be available to the public. I think, Mr. Mayor, thank you all very much for listening to me. I know this probably seemed a bit technical to you. It is. I attempted to simplify information and certainly the material parts of the information as best that I could to promote public awareness and understanding. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, John, and appreciate all your hard work, and certainly your summary and presentation tonight is very well received, I know, by the board and hopefully by the public. I'm going to open this up for questions on Mr. Inglesino's presentation. No opinion. You have plenty of time during the public hearing to give us your opinion on that. We have two ordinances for introduction tonight. The public hearing will be in date, Madam Clerk?
You
16th. So public hearing on the two
Yes, August
ordinances
16th.
will be August 16th. And so if you have any questions to Mr. Inglesino on his presentation.
Mr. Inglesino, you said the lawsuit that Nutley is involved in will be dismissed with prejudice. Is this the Batista lawsuit or another lawsuit?
No, this is the lawsuit that Hoffman LaRoche filed, I believe, in April of 2015, challenging the Blight Declaration or Area in Need of Redevelopment Declaration enacted by the Board of Commissioners in March of 2015.
Okay, so
There hasn't been any real...
this isn't the Bautista environmental
No,
lawsuit. This is the redevelopment process lawsuit that they're going to dismiss with prejudice. Can you
Correct.
explain to us what with prejudice means?
Yes, that just means they can't file it again.
Okay, they can't file it again.
A final adjudication of the matter.
Okay, all right. You said that the pilot in this particular resolution or ordinance that you spoke about applies to building 123 and 123A. What is the current assessed value of those two buildings?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Could you give us a guess?
Nutley's share of that building, because it crosses into Clifton, the Nutley share would be roughly around $12 million.
So on a $12 million, in the pilot we worked out, it's for $379,000 on $12 million of assessed value. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And blows me away. Let me see, I have another one. Ordinance 3346 calls for tax exemptions up to 35 years for building 123 and 123A. And does that include the 10.9 acres, or is that just for the tax exemption just on the buildings?
It just pertains to the lot that's on the buildings. So that would be the 2.29 acres, which is within the 10.9 acre Phase 1 site. So you'd have roughly...
So is it 2 acres or is it 10 acres that the pilot is...
2.29 acres.
2.29 acres plus the two buildings.
Well, those two buildings are on that lot. Correct. Within that acreage.
Correct. So the other Phase 1 acres, which the total acreage is 10.8, correct?
10.98.
10.9. You take away 2 acres, which the pilot is being addressed with, correct? What is the status of the other 8 acres in Phase 1? Will we be receiving 100% taxation?
Yes.
Okay, so that's library, municipal, and school.
That's correct.
But on the 2.9 acres and the buildings, we're not getting school taxation?
Well, you are getting, the schools is included in the pilot calculation, but again, it's based on current 2016 taxes, and so that 379 number includes all municipal, which in your town is municipal, library and open space, and schools is included in that number.
Okay, all right. And
You're essentially
This
getting full taxation as the building exists today, and the agreement is that that number will increase by 5% every 5 years.
the agreement is. Okay, and is that agreement an annual agreement, or this is part of the 35-year tax exemption?
It'll be
agreement?
30 years from the date of the pilot.
Okay, I think the document says 35 years,
Well,
up to 35.
there's
So it says it'll be 30 years from the point at which they take occupancy. What happens between now and when they take occupancy? What is in effect?
Okay. So it's not when they take occupancy; it's when the improvements are
Certificate of occupancy is what it
substantially
said.
completed.
It said occupancy in the document.
Okay, which is another way of defining substantial completion. But until then, the building is just taxed regularly.
And are there any current tax exemptions that
No.
Roche was receiving?
No.
There are no tax exemptions
Not currently. I think at one point we learned in our history that there was a 5-year
Correct.
tax exemption on part of the property, but I think those have expired.
That ended, it was never fully executed. It ended when they announced their departure.
Okay, this is specifically for you. Resolution 201-16 is to approve $150,000 to the firm of Inglesino through December 16. What was your...
That's outside of what the questions are right now.
So I can ask that at the end? Okay, thank
Well,
you.
let me address that. So obviously,
I'm just wondering what's going to happen between now and the end of the year for $150,000. And given that I think the first half of the year the fee was $150,000, so now we're at $300,000 plus in attorney's fees, and our taxes return on this pilot is going to be $379. So we're at a plus $79,000 to the town. Just doing some.
no, you're not, and thank
Okay.
you for bringing up a point that I omitted, and that is, first of all, it's not $300,000 for the year, but the point is that all of the fees that have been expended by the town in connection with this process, to my firm, to your special redevelopment planner,
Mr.
to
Genetempo's firm.
no, Mr. Genetempo it's a different. To your financial advisor, and to your, I think I've got consultants, to the consultants, will all be reimbursed to the town by the medical school.
And what agreement is that in?
That's in the redevelopment agreement.
That is in the redevelopment
Yes,
agreement.
and that is standard.
So all legal fees associated with this process are being reimbursed
Yes,
by the
not only for this year, but I think I've been on since 2014, 13, 14, something like that. So all of the fees that have been paid by the town will be recouped by the town from the medical school. So the taxpayers, when you're putting it out, you're getting it back.
That's great news. Final thing, if you pass Resolution 198-16 tonight, will the exhibits to the resolution become public documents? Because I know in the past and on the website, when we pass resolutions, they're put on the website, and that resolution includes Exhibit A, B, and C. So if that resolution is passed, do those become public documents?
They will as soon as they can be. And again, I tried to outline before some of the considerations and some of the potential constraints. We will, go back and take a look at that. And as soon as documents can be made available to the public, of course, they will be.
Okay, because it's the resolution states that the actual document will be available for public view at township offices, and I'm just wondering why we're not putting the documents that are public on the township website, and why we're having citizens have to get in their car, in traffic, drive to town hall to see these documents when they could easily be uploaded to the website, the ones that are approved for the public.
I would imagine the township would follow its normal.
Normal procedures is that it's only available at town hall.
Well, whatever the procedures are.
Ms. Landry, as I told you last meeting, when the documents can be made public, they will be put up on the website.
Okay, because I just want to say that the ordinance states that it will be available for public viewing in the township offices. So maybe we could change that?
Well, just because they're on the website doesn't mean they wouldn't be available.
Right, but what I'm saying is I'm making a request. The ordinance reads it'll be available in the township offices. Can we also make it available at the library?
Well, the ordinances are prepared to fulfill the legal requirements under the law. Legal requirement that they be available township ordinance at the township offices as specified in the ordinance. Certainly, if the township wants to do more than that, it can, but I know that we're going to put that in the ordinance itself.
Chooses not to. Okay, thank you very much.
State your name and address.
Michael O'Drea, 133 High Street. I just want some clarification. The Kingsland Street urban renewal, the 2.9 acres, the property taxes that they're not going to be paying, will the homeowners of Nutley be picking up that tab?
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm going to say it again. You said that this Kingsland group, 2.9 acres.
Oh, the 2.29 acres.
2.29 acres.
Yeah.
They're not going to be paying property taxes on that. Are the homeowners of Nutley going to pick up that tab?
Well, they're paying. They're making payments in lieu of taxes.
What, the grab thing you're mentioning?
I'm sorry?
Was it you said something about a grab? A grab payment or payment?
Yeah, no, the RABs are the redevelopment area bonds. I indicated that with respect to buildings 123 and 123A, and under the terms of the financial agreement that the redeveloper, the medical school, will be making pilot payments until the improvements that are being made to the building have been substantially completed. They will be paying ordinary, regular taxes to the town. Once those improvements have been completed, substantially completed, then we would go from regular taxes to pilot payments. The pilot payments are, for your purposes, the same as ad valorem taxes, regular taxes, with regard to the municipal portion of the bill. Municipal, your library, and your open space, and your school taxes, based upon the 2016 taxes, and that number has been put as $379,000. It's in the document. After that, the agreement is that that amount will increase by 5% every 5 years during the term of the pilot. But what I think, so that's the agreement. But what I think is important to remember here,
Yes.
is really critical, and this is why I attempted to go through some of the historical context here, is that the one scenario, if this medical school project did
Goes
not
bust?
manifest itself, is you could have had a situation where Hoffman LaRoche would just tear down the buildings, put a fence around the property, and you would get a mere pittance of tax revenue from the property. And Hoffman LaRoche is a big enough company where they could certainly do that. And that was sort of a doomsday scenario for the town. Based upon the Perkins Eastman reports and based upon general market conditions, the amount of time that it would have taken to fill up even the existing buildings was not going to be quick. And so the commissioners didn't want, sort of a vacant, blighted piece of property with no real plan or catalyst for meaningful economic development. And so what this medical school project does is it does a couple of things. Number one, it provides revenue to the town now.
But the question is, those payments, are they equal to the taxes that they would have paid on those 2.9?
For 2016, the answer is yes. After 2016, the answer is that they go up 5% every 5 years. So the increases are not tied directly to your tax increases. They are at a fixed amount of 5% over 5 years. So you're saying that, well, what if taxes go up more than that? Well, then they will be paying slightly less. But what you have to consider is, if this deal doesn't go forward, then the taxpayers will be picking up the tab for the entirety of the site. And so one of the benefits here, again, is that you're getting meaningful payments to the town now, pretty close, in some cases, exactly in the same amount as regular taxes would pay, which is a heck of a lot better off than you would be if this deal didn't come forward. And this is also what's very important, is that the strong belief is that the medical school will be a significant catalyst for really top quality economic development on the site, which will not only maximize revenues from the site, but also really enhance the character of the community, provide economic benefit for your downtown businesses, etc. And you have to look at it as compared to, if not this, then what? Roche is gone. They're gone, and they're not.
No, I understand Roche is gone, but I do appreciate what you're saying. But if I was the CEO of Roche, I wouldn't want that property to sit. I want to maximize my money and get out of it. And that's the way the free market is, business. I'm sure you would want to keep a property just to hurt a little town. You want to get rid of it, make the money, and get out. Of course, they're going to sell it. I just wanted to make sure that the homeowners of Nutley are not picking up the tab for what's going on, for what the property taxes that they're not paying. But you're saying that they are, and that they will be in payments. They're going to make up for it.
What I'm saying is that 2016, they're paying the same taxes and going forward, they're going to pay the same taxes as you are in 2016, just that their amount's going to go up 5% every 5 years, as opposed to whatever tax increase is in each.
Yeah, because the reason why what you said before, and I'm listening to your presentation, my neighbors where I live, put it this way, this August, the property taxes that are due this August are higher than the property taxes that I owed for last August, the same as with all my neighbors. So we want to make sure that we're trying to help you guys to make sure that you have no reason to raise our property taxes even higher this August, and then next August it goes higher. It's like a never-ending cycle, where the good people of this town, hard-working people, the middle class and poor, and the rich, we have our limits. We don't want to be property taxed out of our homes, and of course, since I live near Roche, it is a concern to me.
Do you have another question on Mr. Inglesino's
No, it's cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions to Mr. Inglesino? Thank you again, sir. Ordinance introductions. Commissioner Evans.
Thank you. Ordinance 3346, which I'll read by title. Ordinance of the Township of Nutley authorizing the execution of a financial agreement with Kingsland Street Urban Renewal LLC, granting a tax exemption. I move that this ordinance be passed to a second reading and advertised in the Nutley Sun together with the notice required by law, and that further consideration of said ordinance for final passage by the Board of Commissioners be held at its second reading on August 16th, 2016. So move.
Second.
Commissioner Rogers?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci?
Aye.
Commissioner Evans?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco?
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli?
Aye.
Ordinance 3347, which I'll read by title. An ordinance of the Township of Nutley in the County of Essex, State of New Jersey, providing for the special assessment of the cost of certain improvements on Block 201, Lot .1, 1.03 within the Hoffman LaRoche redevelopment area and establishing a mechanism for payment of the cost thereof. I move that this ordinance be passed to a second reading and advertised in the Nutley Sun together with the notice required by law, and that further consideration of said ordinance for final passage by the Board of Commissioners be held at its second reading on August 16th, 2016. So move.
Second.
Commissioner Rogers?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci?
Aye.
Commissioner Evans?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco?
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli?
Aye. Resolutions. Commissioner Tucci.
Yes, Mayor. Whereas the Township of Nutley entered into a contract with Sal Electric, 83 Fleet Street, Jersey City, New Jersey, for electrical services, and whereas the Director of Parks and Public Property has recommended the following change order from said contract. Change order number 2 in the amount of $21,000. Money is available from Capital Ordinance 3323K and has been certified by the Chief Financial Officer, said certification being attached to this resolution. Now, therefore, be it resolved, Board of Commissioners in the Township of Nutley, County of Essex, State of New Jersey, that change order number 2 in the amount of $21,000 be and is hereby approved. I move the resolution.
Second.
Commissioner Rogers?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci?
Aye.
Commissioner Evans?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco?
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli?
Aye.
Whereas the Township of Nutley has a need to acquire specialized professional services as a fair and open contract pursuant to the provision of NJSA 19:44A-20.5, and whereas the Department of Parks and Public Property has a need to acquire specialized professional services for a New Jersey licensed certified tree expert for forestry services throughout the township, and whereas the municipal clerk is hereby authorized and directed to advertise for a request for qualifications for township forester, now therefore be it resolved that the request for qualifications shall be due on Wednesday, August 24, 2016 at 3 p.m., addressed to the municipal clerk, Nutley Township Hall, 1 Kennedy Drive, Nutley, New Jersey. I move the resolution.
Second.
Commissioner Rogers?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci?
Aye.
Commissioner Evans?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco?
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli?
Aye.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Commissioner Evans.
Thank you. Resolution, I'll read by title 198-16 and summarize towards the end. Alan, it's okay, I summarize based upon Alan.
Absolutely.
Comments? Thank you. Resolution authorizing the execution of certain agreements and authorizing other necessary action in connection with certain improvements on the property to be designated as Block 201, Lot 1.01, Block 201, Lot 1.02, Block 201, Lot 1.03, and Block 201, Lot 1.04 within the Hoffman LaRoche redevelopment area. Whereas in connection with the issuance of bonds, the following additional documents shall be executed. 1, a project structure agreement setting forth the terms and conditions of the financing as well as the security for the bonds. 2, a pledge and assignment agreement pledging the pledged annual service charge to the trustee as security for the bonds, and a redeveloper's contribution agreement, and together with the project structure agreement and the pledge agreement, the Phase 1 additional agreements pursuant to which the redeveloper shall pay the township an amount equal to the unpledged portion of the annual service charge. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Mayor and the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Nutley as follows. 1, the Phase 1 additional agreements hereto 4, prepared or to be prepared in connection with the Phase 1 project in the forms attached hereto as Exhibit A, B, and C, with such changes as may be recommended by council to the township, are hereby authorized and approved. The mayor, the treasurer, clerk are hereby severally authorized to undertake the following actions: execution, delivery, and negotiation of Phase 1 additional agreements, substantially in the forms attached as Exhibits A, B, and C. Municipal clerk of the township is hereby authorized to attest said signatures and to affix seal of the township unto the same. The execution of Phase 1 additional agreements for by the authorized officers shall conclusively evidence the township's approval of the terms thereof, and no further action shall be required. All actions heretofore taken and documents prepared or executed by or on behalf of the township for by the authorized officers, municipal clerk, and other township officers and officials by the township's professional advisors in connection with Phase 1 project and matters related thereto, and the issuance of the bonds by the township are hereby authorized, approved, ratified, and confirmed. The authorizing officers and municipal clerk of the township are each hereby authorized to execute such closing certificates and other documents and instruments as may be necessary or desirable to the issuance by the township of the bonds and related to the financing of Phase 1 project and all matters related thereto. All resolutions or parts thereof inconsistent herewith are hereby rescinded and repealed to the extent such as necessary. The municipal clerk is hereby directed to publish and post notice of the resolution as required by applicable law. This resolution shall take effect at the time and in the manner provided by applicable law. So move.
Second.
Commissioner Rogers?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci?
Aye.
Commissioner Evans?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco?
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli?
Aye.
Whereas the Township of Nutley has a continuing need for the services of Special Development Council for the Hop from the Roast transition through a non-fair and open contract as a professional service pursuant to the provisions of NJSA 19:44A 20.4 and 20.5 as appropriate. Whereas Inglesino, Webster, Wiscalla, and Taylor, 600 Parsippany Road, Parsippany, New Jersey, has ably and continuously provided these services since October 1, 2013. And whereas the firm of Inglesino, Webster, Wiscalla, and Taylor has submitted a fee schedule to provide such services for a total which is not to exceed $150,000. And whereas the anticipated continued term of this contract is for 7 months from June 1, 2016 through December 31st, 2016, whereas the firm of Inglesino, Webster, Wiscalla, Taylor has completed and submitted business entity disclosure certification, which certifies that they have not made any reportable disqualifying contributions to a political or candidate committee in the Township of Nutley in the previous 1 year, and that the contract will prohibit them from making any reportable contributions through the term of the contract. And whereas funds are available from account 601-226-205 and has been certified by the Chief Financial Officer, said certification attached to this resolution. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners in the Township of Nutley County of Essex. 1, the Mayor and the Township Clerk are hereby authorized and directed to finalize a contract and execute a Special Development Council agreement with Inglesino, Webster, Wiscalla, and Taylor of Parsippany, New Jersey, for a term beginning June 1, 2016 through December 31st, 2016, in an amount not to exceed $150,000. A copy of this resolution as well as contract shall be placed on file with the municipal clerk. So move.
Second.
Commissioner Rogers?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci?
Aye.
Commissioner Evans?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco?
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli?
Aye.
Whereas due to the delay in approval of state aid figures from the 2016 budget, the Essex County Board of Taxation has been unable to certify the tax rate for the year 2016, and whereas the township has prepared and issued estimated tax bills for the third quarter installment of 2016 on July 22nd, 2016, and whereas Resolution 12-16 authorizes a 10-day grace period to be granted to make quarterly tax payments, whereas pursuant to PL 1994 C-72, the date of receipt of payment must be 25 days after the bills were mailed. Now therefore be resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Nutley County of Essex that the grace period to pay third quarter property tax payments has been extended to August 16th, 2016. So move.
Second.
Commissioner Rogers?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci?
Aye.
Commissioner Evans?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco?
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli?
Aye.
Mayor.
Resolution 199-16, resolution authorizing the execution of a redevelopment agreement between the Township of Nutley and Kingsland Street Urban Renewal LLC and designating Kingsland Street Urban Renewal LLC as the redeveloper. I move the resolution.
Second.
Commissioner Rogers?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci?
Aye.
Commissioner Evans?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco?
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli?
Aye. Resolution 200-16, whereas raffle applications have been received from the following organizations: VFW Post number 493, license number 31-16, on-premise merchandise raffle for Friday, September 23rd, 2016. Friends of Phoenix Center Foundation's license number 32-16, off-premise merchandise license for Tuesday, November 15th, 2016. Whereas applications have been reviewed and approved by the municipal clerk and the police department. Now, therefore, be resolved by the Board of Commissioners, Township of Nutley, County of Essex, State of New Jersey, that the aforementioned licenses are approved and the municipal clerk is authorized to issue the licenses. I move the resolution.
Second.
Commissioner Rogers?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci?
Aye.
Commissioner Evans?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco?
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli?
Aye. That concludes the business portion of our meeting. Now we'll open it up for comments from the public. Madam Clerk, would you read the...
Yes, Mayor. Yes. All persons addressing the Board of Commissioners regarding community concerns should approach the microphone and provide their name and address for the record. Unless further time is granted by the Board, each person shall limit their address to 5 minutes. All remarks to the Board and its individual members must be addressed to the Mayor. The Mayor may defer citizens' comments to the appropriate member of the Board. Dialogue between citizens and others addressing the Board shall be allowed unless the Mayor or presiding officer or the majority of the membership of the Board shall determine that the interests of decorum and or the expeditious conduct of municipal business are being adversely affected by such dialogue.
Would anybody like to address the Board of Commissioners this evening?
Penny Landry, 135 Lakeside Drive. In a recent article in the Nutley Sun, Mayor Scarpelli, you said that the deal with the Davis Corp closed June 27th, and the municipality bought the half-acre property for less than the $900,000 asking price. What was the actual price that we paid for the Davis property?
Lieutenant Tempo, do you have that number?
I don't have the exact number, but I believe it was somewhere around $865,000.
$865,000, and what?
Please don't quote that.
So we don't know what we paid for it.
Of course, we know. I don't
Okay.
have it with.
All right. You think it's around 865. And what was the assessed value of the property?
Have that with me.
You don't have that information. Okay, thank you. Do you know what our interest rate was on the loan?
Bonds?
On the bonds, yeah.
I don't
The
know.
net interest rate was 0.73%.
0.73% on 865 we'll be paying for how many years?
Probably, well, it's good for 10.
10 years, so it looks like we might be planning
It's an
on...
but we haven't secured long-term financing, but it could be 10 years. But what we secured was a note, which is a term note, which will renew in next year.
So next year, we will have a term note that will come due on approximately $865,000. Do we have a plan yet for that building?
It's with the school as to what their intentions are and their timing. I don't have any more information.
No more information, just that we own that building. Okay, thank you.
Own that building and are collecting rents.
And how much is the monthly rent?
the annual rent is is over $80,000.
$80,000 in
Yes.
rent for 2 apartments and 2 commercial buildings?
Two
2 commercial businesses?
Four apartments and 1 commercial building because one was
One was what?
owner occupied.
Owner occupied, so he gets to stay there rent-free as part of the deal, Mr. Davis does? Is that accurate?
Whatever those terms. I know he's in transition, so whatever his transition allowance is, he'll be there for that period.
A transition allowance. Okay, great, thanks. While you're here, has the Economic Development Advisory Committee met yet in 2016?
It met earlier in the year, but it has not met yet this summer. I'm waiting to the end of the summer
Waiting till the end of the summer?
because people are on vacation.
Okay. I'd like to make my 8th request to you and to the Board of Commissioners that the Economic Development Advisory Committee meetings be open to the public and to the business owners of Nutley, and also that the minutes of these meetings be made available on our website. And another question for you. Went in to see the tax assessor and he resigned.
Yes, he did.
And what is our current status in relation to a township tax
Executing
assessor?
a search for a replacement.
You are actively searching for a replacement?
Yes.
So we're interviewing now for replacement. And who is our temporary tax assessor?
We don't have one.
We do not have one?
And we're allowed to not have one. But I worked out an agreement with Patrick, since he did relocate to another town, that as we needed his services, he would be available to come back and help us.
Maybe you should inform the staff there, because I was told we had hired someone for 10 hours a week, Mr. Buccino, and that...
Frank Buccino is a retired tax assessor. He used to be the president of the State Board of Assessors.
So is he working on payroll?
He's working part-time.
Part-time?
Part-time.
Okay, 10 hours a week is what I was told?
Exactly, yes. What else do you need to know about it?
Okay, so he's a retired tax assessor who
Correct.
we've hired for approximately 10 hours a week as we search for a new tax assessor.
Exactly.
Correct. And what are his hours? What day is he there?
Generally, they're Tuesdays and Thursdays for 3 hours.
Tuesdays and Thursdays?
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, for 3 hours.
That equals 9 hours. And he was hired for 10 hours?
No, he's there. He's being paid on an hourly basis, so he's generally there 3 hours a week. If I need him more, he'll be there for more, and he's currently getting $25 an hour.
Okay, because the guy said he was there 10 hours a week.
Fine.
All right. And what is the year of the scheduled townwide tax reassessment?
We have not been scheduled for any type of reassessment. I believe the term you're referring to is a revaluation.
Yes, revaluation.
And the Essex County Tax Board notified us of 2019.
2019 will be a townwide all-property reevaluation.
It was a target date. It's not a firm date for us. We've just been advised that they're notifying all municipalities to update their records.
Okay.
We have been doing that, obviously, as you know, continually. And our determination will be made based upon when it's appropriate in light of the transition of the Rose property. So a tentative target date is the 19th, but that can change. It's going to be 2019, but that can change.
Could change. Okay.
Mayor,
And
the 5 minutes have expired.
One more question.
Thank you, Mr.
One more
Kennedy.
question, Ms. Landry.
no problem.
All right. Anyone else like to address the Board of Commissioners?
Michael O'Drea, Nutley, 133 High Street. I just want to have some clarification. The Nutley Bike Shop, Franklin Avenue property, we did purchase that. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
Okay. Now, to tear that building down and to extend the Walker School, how much is that going to cost? Anyone has an idea?
That hasn't been discussed at this point.
So it's not determined. Okay. I was just wondering. I was just curious because I didn't know we exactly bought that. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the Board of Commissioners? Seeing no one?
Adjourn. Second.
Commissioner Rogers?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucci?
Aye.
Commissioner Evans?
Aye.
Commissioner Evans?
I said aye.
Commissioner Petracco?
Aye.
Mayor Scarpelli?
Aye.
And the time is now 9:12.